Imagine you're standing in a store looking at a $900 laptop. You want it. You've wanted it for a while, but you look at that number and think, no, not right now. $900 is enough money to make you stop, enough to make you think about rent, bills, savings, and everything else you could do with that money. So you put the laptop back. Then you notice something underneath the price, $75 a month. And suddenly something changes. You're still looking at the exact same laptop. It hasn't become cheaper. You haven't received a raise. Your bank account hasn't changed by a single dollar, but $900 felt expensive. $75 feels manageable. And that's a very strange thing when you actually think about it, because you didn't just discover a cheaper laptop. You discovered a different way of looking at the same debt. And that's what makes the new generation of consumer financing so interesting. It doesn't always ask you to borrow money. It asks you to stop thinking about the money you're borrowing. A few years ago, if someone told you they were going to borrow $900 to buy a laptop, you'd probably understand exactly what that meant. They were going into debt. Maybe they'd use a credit card. Maybe they'd take out financing. Maybe they'd get a personal loan. Whatever the method was, there was a psychological weight attached to it. Borrowing money felt serious. You knew you were borrowing. You knew there was a balance. You knew you'd have to pay it back. But now imagine the same person standing at the same checkout screen. The laptop costs $900, but instead of showing you the $900 as the main decision, the screen says, pay in 12 easy payments. Suddenly, the question in your head isn't, do I want to borrow $900? It's, can I handle $75? That's a completely different question, and it's a much easier question to say yes to. Let's follow Atlas. It's Thursday night. He's sitting on his couch after work, scrolling through his phone. Nothing unusual. He's tired. He's been working all day. He's watching videos, checking messages, half paying attention to everything on the screen. Then he sees them. A pair of headphones he's been thinking about buying. $480. Atlas looks at the price. No, not because he can't technically find $480. He could, but spending $480 on headphones in one shot feels irresponsible, so he closes the page. A few seconds later, he sees another line underneath. 4 payments of $120. Atlas stops scrolling. He looks again. $120. That doesn't sound nearly as bad. He could pay $120 today, then another $120 later. He's still spending $480, but emotionally, it doesn't feel like $480 anymore. And that's the important part. Atlas isn't stupid. He isn't financially reckless. He's not sitting there thinking, I want to get myself into debt. He's thinking something much more ordinary. I can handle that. So he clicks, and that's it. No bank appointment, no dramatic paperwork, no moment where somebody looks him in the eye and says, you are now borrowing $480. The headphones arrive 4 days later. Atlas opens the box, puts them on, and the music sounds great. He smiles. And for the next few days, he doesn't think about the debt at all, because in his mind, he bought headphones. He didn't borrow money. That's the part I want you to remember. He bought something. That's how it feels. And feeling matters, because if the exact same transaction were presented differently, Atlas might have made a completely different decision. Imagine the checkout screen said, you are borrowing $480 today. You will repay this amount over the next several weeks. Would he still click? Maybe, maybe not. But now the word borrowing is sitting in front of him, and borrowing creates friction. It forces you to think about tomorrow. The new checkout experience does something else. It puts the product in the foreground and the debt in the background. Now Atlas has the headphones. 2 weeks pass. He gets paid, pays his normal bills, buys groceries. Nothing unusual. Then he sees another product, a jacket, $180. Atlas likes it, but $180, maybe not. Then the website gives him another option, $45 every 2 weeks. And once again, his brain doesn't have to wrestle with $180. It only has to wrestle with $45. $45? That's not much. So Atlas buys the jacket too. Now he has 2 payment plans. But here's something interesting. If I asked Atlas how much debt he took on that week, he probably wouldn't say $660. He'd probably say something like, I only had 2 small payments. That's how easily the total disappears. Then comes the smartwatch, $300, $75 today. Then the shoes, $200, $50 today. Then maybe a new chair for his apartment, $400, $100 today. None of these decisions feels crazy. That's what makes the story dangerous. There isn't one giant mistake. There's no moment where Atlas suddenly loses control. Instead, there are 5 completely reasonable decisions, and 5 reasonable decisions can still create an unreasonable amount of debt. Think about how strange that is. If somebody walked up to Atlas and said, "Give me $1,500 right now, and I'll give you these things," he might say no. But if 5 different websites say, just $50 today, just $75 today, just $100 today, just 4 payments, just a small monthly amount, his brain handles each decision separately. The problem is, his bank account doesn't. There's only one bank account, one paycheck, one rent payment, one grocery bill, one electricity bill, and all those tiny promises are coming out of the same place. This is where buy now, pay later becomes much more than a payment option. It becomes a psychological tool, because there's a huge difference between saying this costs $600 and saying this costs $100 today. Technically, both statements can describe the same purchase. Psychologically, they don't feel remotely the same. One makes you think about affordability, the other makes you think about access, and that's a powerful distinction. Think about going to a restaurant. Imagine the waiter puts a $200 meal in front of you. You'd probably notice. You might think about it. You might even feel guilty ordering it. But imagine the restaurant somehow convinced you to think about the meal as $7 a day for the next month. Now the number feels almost meaningless. That's what happens when you stretch a cost far enough. The individual payment becomes emotionally smaller than the actual purchase. And once you understand that, you'll notice something strange about modern shopping. The price isn't always the first thing companies want you to see anymore. Sometimes they want you to see the payment. And this isn't limited to expensive electronics. It's furniture, clothing, travel, beauty products, gaming equipment, phones, appliances, concert tickets, and even things that used to require saving can increasingly be framed as something you can have right now. And those 2 words matter, right now, because the entire system is built around one incredibly human weakness. We value something we can enjoy today more heavily than a financial consequence that arrives later. That's not because people are stupid. It's because that's how humans naturally behave. Tomorrow doesn't feel real in the same way today does. Future Atlas is always easier to sacrifice than present Atlas. Present Atlas sees the new phone. Future Atlas gets the bill. Present Atlas gets the headphones. Future Atlas has less money. Present Atlas gets the vacation. Future Atlas comes home to the payment. And the strange thing is, Future Atlas is always the one cleaning up the decisions. That's why the phrase buy now, pay later is so interesting. Read it again. Buy now. That's the reward. Pay later. That's the consequence. The 2 things aren't presented with equal emotional weight. One is exciting. One is distant. One gives you something. The other takes something away. And that's an incredibly effective way to make spending feel easier. Now imagine Atlas checking out again. He's buying a $700 television. The screen says $58.33 per month. Atlas doesn't see $700. He sees $58.33. And maybe he thinks, I already spend more than that on eating out. That's another psychological trick we do to ourselves. We compare the payment to another small expense instead of comparing the entire purchase to our financial situation. $58 doesn't feel like $700. So we don't ask, should I spend $700? We ask, what's $58 going to change? And the answer might honestly be, not much, until you do it again. Because here's what nobody tells you when you're making these decisions. Small payments don't stay small when you collect enough of them. $40, $60, $75, $90, $35, $120, $50, $45. Individually, nothing terrifying. Together, that's your monthly financial life. And suddenly Atlas is earning the same salary he earned before, but less of it belongs to him. Not because his employer cut his pay, not because his rent doubled, not because someone stole his money. He simply spent pieces of his future income before he actually received it. And that phrase is worth remembering. You spent your future income early. That's essentially what many forms of consumer debt allow you to do. You take tomorrow's money and bring it into today, which sounds great until tomorrow arrives. This is why the danger isn't always the interest rate. Of course, interest matters. Fees matter. Late payment consequences matter. Terms matter. Those things absolutely deserve attention. But there's something that comes before all of them, the decision to buy. why? Because if you never make the purchase, you don't have to worry about paying it back. You've emotionally bought the thing before you financially bought it. The only thing standing between you and ownership is the price. And then suddenly the website says, don't worry about the price, just worry about the payment. That's an incredibly powerful moment because the product doesn't need to become cheaper. The company doesn't need to discount it. They just need to make the price easier to swallow. And when you think about it, that's a completely different form of selling. You're not necessarily being persuaded that the product is worth $600. You're being persuaded that $600 doesn't have to feel like $600. And here's where things can get even more complicated. Because once people start using payment plans, they can become accustomed to them. The first purchase feels unusual. The second feels normal. The third barely registers. Eventually, paying in installments can become the default way someone shops. And that's when the question changes from, can I afford this, to how much is the monthly payment? That's not necessarily the same thing. In fact, it can be dangerously different. Imagine Atlas earns $4,000 a month. After rent, food, utilities, transportation, and everything else, he has some money left, maybe $600. He sees a new phone, $1,200. The payment is $100 a month. He thinks, I have $600 left. I can handle $100. And technically, he's right. But then the headphones take $60. The jacket takes $45. The laptop takes $80. The furniture takes $70. The vacation takes $100. Suddenly, $100 plus $60 plus $45 plus $80 plus $70, $100. Atlas didn't buy one $455 obligation. He bought 6 things. And that's how the brain gets tricked by its own accounting system. This is why one of the smartest things you can do is painfully simple. Before buying anything through a payment, add every payment together, not separate together. Open your bank statement, look at your credit, look at your payment, at your subscriptions, look at